If you can hear that in the background, I don't know if you can or not, but that is the Monarch machine. And that is Mylan Graham, who was using the Monarch machine. Why? Because Ohio State is preparing for its first ever home college football playoff game. They will host Tennessee on December 21st. First night game of the year of a team who actually is relevant for Ohio State this year after all these noon games. The Wicked Witch of the Noon Game is finally dead. I'm Steven, that's Andrew, and that's Stefan. We just talked with Ryan Day for about 40 minutes about Tennessee as they begin their prep. Obviously, all the questions, Andrew, are about their offensive line and what it potentially could look like when we see them play on December 21st.
Yeah, the offensive line, I think, is especially coming into focus, not just because of the way that the Michigan game went, but because you're playing Tennessee, who does have a very, very stout defensive line. This isn't, I think a lot of people might think, oh, hey, Tennessee, they're going to spread you out and they're going to, try to score 80 points. And, obviously Tennessee's still the same offense. They're just not as good at it as they were a few years ago. This is a defense team. And now with Tennessee's defensive line, this is a big question mark for Ohio State's offensive line, because the Tennessee matchup in front of them, they're talking about maybe we change up our offensive line configuration. It sounds like Donovan Jackson's going to stay at tackle, but Ryan Day mentioned Josh Padilla as by name and said maybe he's in the mix. He mentioned Luke Montgomery by name and said maybe he's in the mix. He even mentioned George Fitzpatrick as somebody who could, step into this light and have a good week of practice and prove that maybe he deserves a look. We'll see if that's true. But to me, I think the overarching theme of that is Ohio State is considering offensive line changes going into a college football playoff game against a very stout defensive line. And we're going to talk more about this on Buckeye Talk. It's a tough matchup for Ohio State's offense because the run game and the pass protection is going to be really, really important. And that's probably, in terms of the teams they realistically could have seen, Tennessee might be the most difficult team that the offensive line could have had to prepare for.
Disagree, but we'll talk about that on Buckeye Talk. Stefan, you did do a small look ahead into Tennessee. We'll deep dive into them over the next 2 weeks until that game begins. But what about Tennessee's defensive line stands out?
Yeah, it starts with Pierce, right? What he's able to do. That's a potential top 10 NFL draft pick when we get to April. He's a machine. That's the guy that you circle right away. You guys say you got to slow him down. But defensive line as a whole, they're one of the best rush defenses in the country. So it's like, congrats. Like, you moved on from the Michigan game mentally maybe, but what you're about to face is not much different, at least up front, compared to what you see to Michigan. So it's going to be an incredible test for not just the tackles, but the interior of this offensive line as well. That, like Andrew was talking about, the area on this team that we're maybe most concerned about. So it's a massive test coming up. I personally think Tennessee has the best defensive line in the country. And maybe some people disagree. It sounds like Steven disagrees. But they're a unit that, in terms of matchup specific, like if you were to say, what is Ohio State's biggest weakness? That is probably the one team you didn't want to face. Now, I think Oregon's a better team. I think there's teams that are better than Tennessee, but in that matchup specifically, this might be Ohio State's toughest possible test when it comes to facing a defensive line.
I think Oregon's defensive line is better. And I say that understand. Like, Tennessee's defensive line is great at stopping the run. They're top 10 in the country in stopping the run. They only have 29 sacks on the year. James Pierce has 52 pressure, so it's very similar to Penn State situation where they've got a dude who's like a stud and then some really quality guys, but I think the idea of Tennessee is better than when you actually go look at the numbers and you actually go watch film on them. While Oregon, that team is good. That is a good football team. Very, very good football team. Here's why I disagree. So don't run the ball.
Yes, we were also saying that at halftime on November 30th.
Which is why I don't think they're going to run the ball. I honestly think they're going to throw the ball around the yard today. And I get it, pass protection. Pass protection has not been a problem no matter what variation of the offensive line we have seen, other than when Zim Maholski was out there, who Ryan Day said was unavailable. He said Luke Montgomery and Josh Padilla are in the mix. They're in the mix not because of by the way he answered those questions, because then Andy Anderson from 11 Warriors followed up with, what have you seen from those two guys that lets you know they should deserve this? His answer wasn't, oh, those guys are dominating in practice. His answer was, they've had good practices and they deserve a shot. Why? Because the guys we threw out there the first time didn't play well enough, right? George Fitzpatrick, that challenge was, give us a reason to not put Donovan Jackson at left tackle. And that's not going to happen over the next 2 weeks. Throw the ball. They can scheme around good pass rushers. We've seen them do it already this year. The problem with the Michigan game, to both of your guys' point, stout defensive line, and you decided, let's run into it and let's see what happens. Don't do that. JJ, Mecca, Carnell, Throw it. Be creative with the way you throw it. No, I'm not saying that you drop back and you stand there for 7 seconds and let James Pierce get after you. But what did we see against Penn State? We saw them creatively find ways to dictate things where, yeah, Abdul Carter had a couple of sacks in those games, but Abdul Carter didn't wreck that game. And Abdul Carter and James Pierce are very similar NFL draft prospects to me. So I think what this boils down to is, which Ryan Day are we going to get? Are we going to get the Ryan Day that we keep seeing against Michigan? Or are we going to see the Ryan Day who popped up in there 2 years ago and said, we need 40 points to win a playoff game?
I'm thinking about this as we talk about it. One of the things that we had talked about kind of in the abstract for months is, what if an SEC team's got to come north and play in the cold? Ohio State's probably rooting for 45 degrees and calm winds and no precipitation that night, because that would be really beneficial to Ohio State. If it's 24 degrees and 25-mile-an-hour winds and it's snowing, I don't know if that benefits Ohio State. So I agree with you. Throw the ball. If you're an Ohio State fan, you probably want fair weather for December 21st.
Yeah, but that's more about the fact that one team is at least used to playing in weather like that, and the other team, it's 55 degrees and they're putting heaters on the sideline.
You're also playing one of the most northernmost SEC teams, right? You're not playing Miami.
No, listen. Cam Moore's not going to be out there. That's true. I'm just saying, everything you guys are talking about is fair. And it's in a world where you think that Ryan Day and Chip Kelly are going to decide to ram their heads into a wall again and try the Michigan game plan again. I'm saying, don't do the Michigan game plan. Do the Oregon game plan without the mistakes on offense. That's all you got to do. The Oregon game plan without the mistakes. Or again, Oregon's defensive line did not game wreck Ohio State's game plan.
And Jordan Burch did not play.
Mateo Oyungleye.
He's very good. He did play.
Right. So it's not like, oh, they lost Jordan Burch and they lost first-round draft picks out there. They still had first-round draft picks out there. So, again, don't do the Michigan plan. Do the plan from the other 11 games, because that's when you win games or can at least compete in those games. Plus, it's at home. So it'll be interesting. We're going to continue to talk about this on Buckeye Talk. Get the text, 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial. $3.99 after that. Stefan, Andrew, the SEC man. Steven, Miami boy. OSU boy. Miami boy. See ya.